Let me start with a story. Once, I had a toothache, a horrible, unbearable toothache in one of my bottom left molars. I remember it started on a Friday evening as a sharp, shrewd pain in reaction to some sweets I was chewing, like the glutton I am. The pain eventually subsided and I was granted relief for a time. In that moment of relief, I thought to myself that the unavoidable visit to the dentist can be postponed until Monday. Mind you, I lived in a small town where the dentist was only available weekdays, unless there was an emergency. As the night drew closer, so did the pain return, and with a vengeance. I tried to get some sleep, but the pain was so fierce, despite the analgesics, that it kept me wide awake. After hours of struggling in my bed, I realized I won't be getting any rest tonight, so I might as well try to do something. I turned on my computer, browsed for a bit, looked through some articles, but because of the pain, I couldn't focus. I started Steam, skimmed over my games library, and launched The Binding of Isaac. For me, the game was new at the time. I was drawn in by the art style, the unsettling and grotesque atmosphere, the blasphemous story, and the highly addicting gameplay and reward structure. I played it until morning, completed the game several times, but if you ever tried it, you know that each time you finish it, the deeper it gets, literally. The unending painful throbbing was still there, but by morning it became much more tolerable. And soon it hit me. I barely noticed it while I was sucked into the twisted basement world of Isaac. I continued my Saturday and Sunday in the same manner. Whenever the pain would overwhelm me, I would pop in The Binding of Isaac, play it for several hours straight, and each time I got so immersed that I didn't have the capacity to notice the pain. If I was fortunate, it let up a bit when I stopped. If not, I would just continue playing till I got exhausted. I had very little sleep that weekend, but at last, Monday morning came, and although I had to have my tooth extracted, I was finally free from the maddening pain in my mouth. Now let me tell you another story. When I finished my studies, I was looking for a job. For a pretty long time, I might add. Almost a year. I ended up taking a job I was qualified for, but never really wanted. This position I was in had no perspective, no self-development opportunities, no climbing the ladder. The wage was abysmal and had no chance of improving, but the worst part was that it offered no mental or even physical challenge. And while the colleagues were nice, I knew I had way more in me and yearned for something greater. Some time passed and I got used to things. I usually spent my 8 hours at work, and as soon as the clock hit 5, I was off rushing home. You see, I bought myself a new game, my first MMORPG, Guild Wars 2. Each evening, when I arrived home, I grabbed myself something to eat, then dove right into the world of Tyria, as the crafty Azura called gobs. I led world events, raids in a game mode called World vs World, played some PvP, collected the hardest to get equipment, and had all the rarest achievements. On the way, I joined guilds, made friends, quarreled with said friends, then laughed and went on adventures together. Overall, I had a great time as gobs. At least until around midnight when I turned off the game. Then, slowly, everything started fading, like colors escaping from a children's book. I felt empty, but I was so weary by then that I did not bother thinking through why, and soon merciful sleep took all my bad thoughts away. As time went on, the enjoyment I got out of the game became less and less. I wasn't playing for the game itself, as I did everything there was to do by that point, but for the online community that I was a part of. This community eventually dwindled, and people moved on to other games. But I found myself still logging on and playing 5-6 hours a day. The fun I had was gone, and a pointless routine or ritual took its place. Something was off rail. I knew it, but couldn't put my finger on it. By that point, I hated my job, and I gradually lost hope that I could be anything more. Yet, I did not move. It took me over 4 years to quit my job, and Guild Wars 2. So if you are still listening, you might be wondering, why have I told you these stories? At first glance, it may seem that they don't have much in common, but if you look further, they share a theme. Escapism. What is escapism? According to Wikipedia, escapism is a mental diversion from unpleasant or boring aspects of daily life, typically through activities involving imagination or entertainment. In other words, it is a way for one to consciously or unconsciously avoid situations, events, and actions that would cause stress or would be displeasing. As the name suggests, it is an escape from the real world. There can be many tools used for escaping, including more healthy ones, like reading a good book, watching a movie, or listening to some entrancing music. Some that are harder to judge, like endlessly scrolling through social media, or binge-watching YouTube. And some that can be more damaging, like alcohol, drugs, or even porn. All of these can turn into habits, and with enough time and lack of control, dependencies. In my stories, video games were the tool. In the first one, as a temporary refuge, a shelter while the storm was raging, until finally there was a calm. In the second one, it was more like a barricade I built to keep reality from entering my secure little realm. But what makes one turn to escapism? What both stories share is that there was a problem I was facing. In the first one, it was the aching tooth. In the second one, it was the dullness of my job. Escapism is a way to deal with problems. Or deal might not be the right word. Avoid is more accurate. Taking on a problem or challenge is always stressful. You are worried that you might fail, worried of the consequences that will bring, worried what others will think, worried of your self-perception. Can you do it? Are you strong enough? Are you smart enough? Escapism lets you put that all aside and wander off to a world where you feel home and safe, where you are in control and can shake off the uncertainty. Depending on the tool, that world may be a lively pub or the Mushroom Kingdom, where you can be the hero and rescue the princess. Rescuing the princess isn't easy per se. If it was, it wouldn't feel so good. Achieving something in a video game triggers the reward system in our brains, the same way as achieving something in real life would. And while saving Peach is fun all the way and only takes a couple of hours, preparing for an exam or getting that project finally wrapped up or building a career is usually less fun and takes a considerable amount of time. So if the rewards are sort of the same, it's no wonder that we are tempted to take instant gratification over delayed rewards. So what's the problem then? Why wouldn't you choose escapism? The thing is, with real-world problems, they don't tend to go away if you just stick your head in the sand. On the contrary, they keep piling up into one big heap until you are buried under it. Another issue is that if you avoid facing your problems, you will never know how to overcome them. In the second story, I neglected the barren prospects of my job and where that would lead to, and turned to the fantasy world of Tyria instead. Meanwhile, I conformed to my job and accepted that that's the way it is. The more time I spent in Guild Wars 2 opening chests, the more doors of opportunity closed for me in real life. And the deeper the hole got I was digging for myself. I started neglecting my real-world friends, went to less and less social gatherings, moved less, read less. I had no energy for basically anything outside gaming. In the meantime, I did gain something as well: anxiety and weight. I got easily frustrated, blamed everyone and everything else for my failures. I was envious of everyone who had it better than me, but I did not dare to make a move to improve my own situation. Why do so when you can blame misfortune, fate, or God? The prolonged stay in the virtual world eventually drained me of motivation and will. I felt powerless. Whenever the monitor turned black, I was left alone with a general feeling of anxiety and discomfort. Challenges by nature provide an opportunity to grow. If you always choose to shy from them, you also choose to be fixated in time, stuck in a loop, not becoming more. Your mind and body, just like a blade in a fantasy RPG, needs owning. If you keep it sheathed all the time, it will become dull and rusty. And this only makes it harder to get out of the rut. So you can either go down that road, first become desensitized and uncaring, then develop anxiety and depression and see how deep you can dig yourself before you are completely in the dark. Or you start thinking, why is it that the game you keep playing no longer gives you pleasure? And maybe take the courage to face your challenges and problems. So, is escapism always a bad thing? Not necessarily. You see, in the stories, there's a key difference. In the first one, I could not act to ease my suffering. The only option I had was to be patient and wait. In the second one, I dared not act, but I had the possibility. Escapism can be a great tool to leave everyday mundanity behind, or used as recreation to relieve stress, or just to zone out a bit and experience something new, or in my case, to give me a peace of mind. It can even be handy in problem solving, by taking a step back from the problem at hand and coming back later with a refreshed mind. It may be that other aspects that you couldn't see before will reveal themselves to you. What matters is why you are choosing to escape. Is it just a temporary pause mode in your life once in a while that everyone needs? Or is it that you are not willing to confront the next terrifying boss that comes your way? As for so many things, it holds true for escapism as well. Quoted from Anazura, quoted from Oscar Wilde, everything in moderation, including moderation. So what's the takeaway? What was the point of all this? Are all indie games good then, and all MMOs bad? No, of course not. Games are neither inherently good or bad. It's you and how you use them that can turn them into a reinvigorating breeze of fresh air, or a slowly creeping dense fog to lose yourself into. So you might want to consider, if you are booting that game up for the 4,000th time, and even after winning a match, you just feel the embrace of emptiness around you, it may be time to ask yourself the question, what are you running from?